Today is going to be a very interesting conversation. Today, I'm interviewing someone who says we don't need traditional marketing. There's another way we can do it. And coming from a 42-year-old company, I'm very interested to hear what he has to tell us. But before we get started, my name is Donna Peterson, and you are listening to the B2B Marketing Excellence Podcast, where I go around the world and speak with innovators about their business, about their industry, what is working, what's not, so that you as a listener can get some takeaways and watch your marketing succeed. So let's jump in. Today, my guest is Aditya Varanasi, and he is the founder and CEO of Awarity. Hello, Aditya. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I can't complain. It's Tuesday and the sun is out, so that's always a good day.
That's great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, like I said, I'm very interested to hear what you have to say because our company, based 42 years ago on some traditional marketing channels, is how our basis. And now you're saying we don't really need those traditional advertising methods, and there's a more effective way for us to stand out in the marketplace. So I wanted to hear, how can we do this?
Yeah, over the last 10 years or so, there's been a lot of technological advancement. And one of them in the advertising industry is the way programmatic advertising has really emerged. The challenge was with programmatic advertising over the years is it was new and it wasn't terribly well regulated or standardized. And so you have a lot of people that have tried it and candidly just had a bad experience. And I became really intrigued with programmatic advertising when I was in brand marketing at PepsiCo, and we used it effectively across several brands that I'd worked on. And I became extremely intrigued with it for the reason that I felt like it was the one perfect ad channel. And by that, I mean, you can reach virtually anyone. Every single one of us are on websites every day. Yeah. Those websites have ad slots that they make available through ad exchanges that can be purchased programmatically. Yeah. And so what happens is it's the one place outside of traditional advertising where everybody's on websites, whether they're reading the news, checking the weather, researching a topic, whatever that might be, we're all on websites. 92% of American households are connected to the internet. 2/3 of that time on the internet is actually spent on the open web. But as I was saying, it was unregulated, costs were high, minimums were high, and therefore people had a bad experience and didn't adopt it to the rate that I would have expected them to. And that's where Awarity comes in. I felt like there was a lot of potential with programmatic advertising. We set about in establishing and defining what the industry standards should be in terms of effectiveness. And we really focused on small businesses when I started. The thought was a lot of these small businesses that used to rely on traditional advertising like newspapers or local magazines, or the yellow pages. Remember people used to buy, brands used to buy quarter pages of the yellow pages to get featured. So if you're looking for a restaurant, you'd see which ones had the biggest image in the yellow pages, and that's where you might check out. Now, those businesses don't have those options to build awareness. So they're all pouring their money into social and search. But as you know, those platforms are very saturated.
Yes.
And the costs have continued to rise exponentially because that's the place where everybody's pouring their dollars into. And that's not to say there isn't a role for traditional advertising or search and social, but they all have a role to play. And I felt strongly that if we added top of funnel awareness building advertising that was really efficient and really affordable, we could help small businesses by building awareness, bringing more people into their marketing funnel. Then ultimately, as more people come into the funnel, there's more people to react to those things being done on social, search, website, email, those other channels, and it has a compounding effect. It goes back to the old adage, a consumer needs to see an average of 7 times before they take action. Yeah. And if you're just in 2 channels, it's really hard to get there. Yeah. And it builds upon some experience I had at PepsiCo too, where, say I'm working on the Cheetos brand. we would see that our in-store pricing promotions actually performed better when we had TV advertising going at the same time. And it makes sense. Consumers see the TV commercial, they think, oh yeah, Cheetos, that's unique in the snacking world. Because look, there's sweet snacks, there's a million different salty snacks, there's healthy snacks, there's a whole universe of snacking out there. Cheetos has a very unique role. It makes you feel like a kid again when you eat it. And you just get reminded. Doesn't mean you're ready to run to the store from seeing the commercial. Just like, oh yeah, Cheetos. That makes me feel,
Plant the seed. Plant the seed in your head that, oh, Cheetos the next time I'm there. Yep.
And then when you're in the store and you see it on promotion on a perimeter end cap, you're like, oh yeah, I was thinking about Cheetos. And it makes sense. And so our marketing regressions would consistently show that if we had top of funnel on top of the other things that we do to drive sales, it had an amplifying effect. It wasn't 1 + 1 = 2. It became 1 + 1 = 11.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And with all of our clients, we promote multi-channel. Like you said, it can't just be one or the other. And I think just like you said, it can't be no traditional, but we need to have these other channels so that your company name, your brand is out there wherever your target audience is.
Right.
And I've been in meetings with CEOs who sit down and they give me the big whiteboard and they say, well, Donna, okay, from all the emails we did and all the ads we placed, this is how many leads we got. And I'd be, well, what about the branding? And they'll say, well, we don't care about branding. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. What do you mean you don't care about branding? And just like you said, you've got to care about branding because their company has to be top of mind.
Right. No, and I think building on that, I think it's really easy, especially in this world where we want to measure everything. Yes. It's really easy to forget that that lead is a customer. It's a person. And that person had a journey and a path that ultimately brought them to you that goes far beyond a single email, a single social post, or a single query. They had to have a need for what you do. They had to think about looking for you at that time. You have to understand what the competitive set is. You have to have competitive pricing. What if somebody reached out and you didn't follow up? I remember one time we did an audit in a specific industry that will be unnamed, and we tried reaching out to 20 different companies. We became a lead for 20 different companies. Only 2 of them followed up with us. And advertising can't solve that. So you go back to the fundamentals of marketing, the 4 Ps. Those other 3 Ps have to also be working for somebody to ultimately become a lead. And you have to be mindful that that lead is a person that has to go through their own journey before they find you and they're ready to buy from you.
Yes.
And I think, go ahead.
I was just going to say, coming from the B2B side, that has become more important than ever because we always used to keep B2B very stoic, very professional. And we've got to kind of break down those barriers and say, yes, they're a B2B brand, but the individual that is making that decision is a human. And you've got to create that emotion. You have to, I tell my clients, think about yourself. How do you make decisions? And like we were talking about earlier, how do you decide to buy that car? How do you buy that refrigerator? Whatever it is, we all go through several stages of researching, looking, asking questions, seeing what other people think. What do other people recommend? Do they recommend that Samsung TV set? What is it? But that's what B2B brands have to follow that lead and do the same thing now.
Exactly. And I think tying back then, so when I started Awarity, the focus was to bring top of funnel advertising to local small businesses that couldn't rely on traditional methods. And we saw a lot of success. A lot of these businesses, when they added awareness for a very nominal monthly fee, they saw their other channels started to work better. We started here, restaurants started to grow, gain foot traffic. We saw other clients, they started to grow online sales. And it makes sense. The science always plays out. What surprised me was when B2B companies started coming to us, can you do the same thing? And good advertising really comes down to 3 things. Are you reaching the right people? Like we talked about programmatic advertising, you can reach virtually anyone. Are you doing so at an appropriate frequency? You don't want to inundate them to where they're getting annoyed by your message, because you also see diminishing returns, but you also have to reach them enough to plant the seed. You can't just reach them once every 6 months. I think that's going to stick as well. Appropriate frequency. But then most importantly, you have to have a compelling message, something that meets them where they are, shows them you understand their pain points, and yet you're providing a unique value.
Yeah.
But you have to do so really succinctly. People are exposed to 4,000 to 6,000 ad messages a day. And simplicity is generally the best tool to stand out. Simplicity in relating to your target audience will help you stand out. And so that's why we include creative in every campaign. And we have world-class designers on our team that take all the best practices of a company like PepsiCo, but then makes it a part of every campaign that we run here. And so on the B2B side, instead of targeting people within 5 miles of a restaurant, we were targeting people on websites when they're reading about cloud computing.
Yeah.
And we were targeting chemists using third-party cookie data or using CRM data, or we were targeting IT decision makers about how to, companies that can help rebuild their infrastructure with the cloud architecture. There was
that was one of my questions. So you can get very granular in the selection criteria, because a lot of the companies I deal with, very established companies, and sometimes when I'll say programmatic, they're like, no way, that's too broad for us. And I've tried to educate them that no, we can whittle it down through keywords and terms of what people are looking for, so that your message really ends up in front of that target audience.
Absolutely. We use a handful of tools, particularly on the B2B side. One is we will create a list of websites specific to that industry. Sometimes they might include sites like Wall Street Journal or CNBC, sites that we know the C-level executives generally visit to consume news, and know that brand building on those sites helps, so that when they're presented with, hey, we want to do something with this company, that there's a better chance that they'll know who that company is and why they stand out. And that's where the branding comes in. Yep.
But even if you're on those websites, you're still not going out to every single CEO that might be reading the Wall Street Journal. You're still able to whittle it down, saying, okay, they're in the pharmaceutical space, or they're interested in pharmaceutical manufacturing in some aspect.
That is possible too.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the next layer is content-based targeting, taking specific phrases and words. And then when they appear on a web page within a zip code that you want to target for the campaign, we can try to place your ad there. And so we know, particularly on the B2B side, there are some very specific words and phrases that people read about in specific industries. And that's another tool to target them. We can target against the CRM list. We have Awarity CRM Connect, which is powered by LiveRamp. And if you upload a CRM list, we can actually target those individuals on your CRM list with banner ads. There is also third-party audience data. Some of it's cookie-based, so it could be limited. But we partner with companies like Dun & Bradstreet, and we can procure lists and target people that work for specific companies or within specific industries or within specific job functions, and also target them with advertising. What we recommend doing is piecing 2 to 3 of these together that make the most sense. And think of it like a Venn diagram. You get one segment this way, you get one segment this way, but then in total, you're kind of meeting the segment of folks that you want to reach within a company to build awareness for that business, so that when decision time comes, you're in the consideration set.
Yeah. And I totally agree that we've done this before with clients, where we'll do an email blast, but then we match their profile and we're able to place banners up in front of that same specific audience, but also anyone else who matches that profile, and the banners are there. Because like you said, executives are so busy now. They're bombarded by so many messages. And a lot of my clients have very expensive offers. So it's not like you're going to send them an email and they're going to say, yes, I'm going to buy. No, it takes time. I work with Harvard Kennedy School, and some of their programs can be $25,000. Well, that takes some thought. Am I going to be able to go to the program? Do I have time to take out of the office to go to the class? There's a lot of details you've got to analyze and figure out, and you need more time. But the problem is you don't always go back to that email.
Right.
But then if you see that banner, you're like, oh, that's right. It reminds you of an action you want to take.
Right. And that's where we include retargeting as well with every campaign. So if somebody's been to your site, we're going to serve them a higher frequency of ads for a period of time just to stay top of mind. Remember, you were looking at this. Don't forget, you were looking at this. And what happens is people attribute the result to the retargeting ad, not realizing, hey, it was that prospecting ad that brought them in the first place.
Mm-hmm. And so now when you're doing the retargeting, because you talked about this before, I know there's a very fine balance between being a stalker.
Yes.
But keeping your brand top of mind. So when you're doing the retargeting, what type of space do you usually do those banners?
So one of the things we do on that is we cap frequency.
Okay.
So I think where people maybe get annoyed is if you visit a site and then you get 25 ads for that site over the next hour, that can be a little disruptive, a little much. And so we will set strategic caps on retargeting so that the ad's staying in front of them, but it's not inundating them over time. And so it's still there that, hey, you recognize you went to the site and you're seeing the ad, but it's not every ad slot that you're seeing every time you're on the internet.
That's always good, because there's always been that time where maybe I looked at a pair of shoes or cross-country skis or something like that, and then I see the ad every single time. And first of all, your eyes roll over it. You don't even pay attention to it. But then you're like, this is overkill. Yeah. Because coming from a marketer standpoint, I think that company is wasting their money, because at this point, you're not getting anyone to click on it. You're not getting anyone to respond. Don't do it.
Right.
So what do you see are the biggest challenges for companies as they try to go to this more programmatic way of advertising versus, traditional advertising?
I think it goes back to what you said, which is people want immediate results. Yeah. And so you can't expect that turning on a new ad channel is going to shorten a customer journey from a year to a month or a week. I think the biggest challenge is in this environment where we want to measure everything, first off, being patient. Yeah. Are you reaching the right people? Are you doing so at an appropriate frequency? And do you have a compelling message? And if you do that consistently, it will work. So I think the biggest challenge people face is, what are the KPIs to think about? And we're launching some additional content around this on our site as well. But how do you now track different KPIs just to show there's progress in the customer journey? One of the things that we offer to...
That's so important. I have to tell you, as I go and I answer to CEOs of organizations, those little KPIs along the way help so much, because they do not want to hear from me. We need 6 months or 9 months to really see that traction take place. So those KPIs along the way are perfect.
Absolutely. And so things like, how is it impacting new site visitors? What pages are people viewing? Do you have an intermediate form where there's maybe a download or a white paper or case study people can get? Looking at responsiveness of other channels. Yeah. Looking again at the reach, frequency, and the message. Is that on strategy? You're reaching the right audiences, and taking this holistic view. And I can't give away too much, but we have some exciting stuff in our R&D pipeline that we're going to roll out and make accessible to everyone to make that part easier as well, by integrating with other platforms, pulling data in, and then running some advanced modeling to show how the advertising is or isn't moving the needle the way that they want.
That's important. And that's also gets back to the companies having firm goals and mission on what they want to do with their company, then setting up the right KPIs so that everything that they're doing is leading them on that direct path to achieve the goals.
Right.
I know even just from this podcast, that's what we do. We analyze, like, what is our podcast about, the content, how many people are subscribing, even though I don't put too much weight in that, but how many are viewing? Are they viewing it all the way through? Is it offering enough in-depth content that just holds their attention?
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. That's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Now, we work with a lot of industry-specific clients. And so we go out to industry sources and we work with email lists that way. We don't really get much success using the big compiled lists. But when they go to those industry-specific lists, then you're saying, if the people do click through and they maybe register for something at one point, you're able to take those records, so their own house file, you can put it into your system so that regularly they can display banners up in front of those people.
Exactly.
Okay. I just wanted to get that. So then in your opinion, what are the key considerations for a company to think about adding this or exploring the new technologies needed for them to stay current in today's market?
I think first it takes a broader view of success. And by that, obviously, every decision anyone makes in business is to grow. Yeah. It's to grow the business, it's to develop the business. But then not everything is a one-to-one action. Mm-hmm. And so I think the first thing I always encourage people to do when they're going to try something is I say, pick a budget that you're comfortable with maintaining for, say, 6 months or a year. Don't pick a budget that's going to add stress, that maybe eats into your P&L in a way that you're going to be staring at it every time you see it. Pick something you can stick with, and then size and scope whatever campaign you're doing to fit that budget versus saying, I want to be nationwide and reach everyone.
Right.
And when you do that and set some finite boundaries, then you can make the campaign affordable. That's something we take pride with at Awarity. Our campaigns run for as little as $299 a month.
Yeah.
And then give it time to foster. See how it brings new people to the site. See how it's driving new engagement. And then you can always build from there. So if you're concerned with the cost, if you're concerned with the investment, concerned with the time, mitigate that by picking a cost that you're comfortable with committing to for an extended period of time. And then you can make a decision based on what you see there.
Yeah. It sounds like you have the same philosophy as myself. We are not here to get clients to sell one big order.
Right.
We rather you start small, test it out, and then change if we have to, but keep it going so that it builds momentum and you start to get a better return on your investment, but you're getting those quality leads that you're able to then turn into very valuable customers.
Yeah, right. And I think like one of the common things I always hear when people talk about the word test is, oh, we're going to test it. We're going to see if it works. I'm like, well, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Let's be clear here. This is going to work.
Yeah.
In terms of we're going to reach your target customer more efficiently than any other form of advertising. We're going to do so more affordably than any other form of advertising. That part's going to work. What happens after that is beyond the role of just advertising. There's a whole host of other factors that ultimately cultivate that individual into becoming a lead. And many of those are not in our control. So I always tell them, you could rest assured, we're going to do everything we can to reach that target customer as cost efficiently as possible. And more cost efficiently than anything else out there. And that's going to work. Yeah. What happens after that is the part that we want to try to figure out over time.
Well, I'll always say marketing is a puzzle and we're always putting the pieces together. So like you said, you can almost say, guarantee you're going to get in front of your target audience. But now, is the messaging exactly what that audience needs to see or hear? Is your offer exactly what they need? And that gets back to what you were saying earlier. You almost have to make sure your marketing message reads their mind, gives them exactly what they need at that moment to help them do their job better. And I'm speaking on a B2B side. Of course, on a B2C side, it would be different, but that's not my wheelhouse, so I won't speak about that. But on the B2B side, I know we have to talk to the individual about what their challenges and pain points are within their job.
Yes.
And then you deliver the message.
And that's where that CRM list can be really compelling, because you can segment that list. You could say, hey, for this portion, I need them to see this message, because they're the engineer that's making the decisions. There's a very specific way they're thinking about it. When we go to the procurement team or maybe the executive team, they need to see something more about cost and efficiency and savings. It's still the same product.
Yeah.
But you're tailoring that message based on who you have in that CRM list. And companies, particularly B2B companies, generally do a really good job of knowing who is who and what message they need to get to different people. This is just a new way to activate it that candidly wasn't as available before.
Yeah. I'm laughing because I use that same analogy. If you're going to a CFO, you better be talking about numbers and the savings. But if you're going to a CEO, you better give them that full big picture of what your product or service can offer. So you're right. It's knowing the different things. Now, I will tell you a story. We did use programmatic, and this is going to be interesting for your customers. We did a programmatic years ago, and what it helped us discover is by who was clicking on the messages, the client thought their wheelhouse was 10 to 1,000 employee size in specific industries and titles. But after doing a programmatic campaign, we found out for some reason, I think it was $250 to $499 didn't respond at all. So what they were able to do is they were able to take the information they got from their programmatic and then go out to their list rentals. So any email lists they use, and they were able to use the other criteria, leaving out that employee size, which obviously wasn't interested in what they had.
Mm-hmm.
So it helped them, when you're talking about whether it's going to be effective or not. I think every initiative you do in marketing, you get something out of, and you can take that and grow upon it.
Absolutely.
So just like this company, they then went out and their emails became more responsive because they were able to cut out that segment, which they found out from a programmatic campaign.
No, that's exactly right. And I think one of the unique challenges of programmatic we've seen is you can see the creative and creative performance in our dashboard. If you have 15 ads, you'll see the performance of all 15 ads. But we've seen 98% of those conversions actually follow the impression, not the click.
Okay.
And we've seen this across industries, B2B, B2C, sports. Consistently, we see that, and it makes sense. You plant the seed, and then they'll react and respond on their own time. And so, one of the things we offer on that standpoint is there's a way to track the traffic from the different campaign tactics to see which of those tactics is actually driving that indirect web traffic as well. And it goes back to kind of our commitment to invest in developing intermediate KPIs. So you can start to see what's working and what's not beyond just the click. Because I think we're in a world today where very few people click on ads intentionally anymore. But when an ad sticks, and I can tell you, we ran a campaign for a large national company that everyone would recognize. It was the lowest click rate campaign we've ever seen. But it drove incremental lift to their business that was statistically significant and very measurable within the data they provided us.
So sometimes it's not whether they click on it, it's just seeing that name out there, reminding them of a specific thing that brought them back to that website.
And in this case, we're educating on building awareness for some new products, just featuring some new product offerings that were out there.
Well, I think I mentioned to you earlier, right now, I'm a strong believer that it's all about relationship building. And even on the B2B side, we are a company, we've been around for 42 years. We do not go out promoting, hey, we've been around for 42 years. We're great. We're this. No, I sit here and we do educational things like the podcast or blogs, whatever we're doing, LinkedIn Lives. It's to educate potential leads or customers about quality marketing. And even if you don't work with world innovators, I don't want people out there doing marketing initiatives that don't work, because that just puts a bad light on our industry as a whole.
Right.
And that's why it's important to be out there educating people on different channels about the different marketing strategies they can use.
No, we're aligned 100%. We have a pretty extensive blog on our site. The same thing. The goal is just to educate. When it comes to marketing and advertising, it's literally seems to be one of the functions where people struggle to wrap their head around what's working, what's not working, how to think about it. And I could say this, confidently, even having worked at PepsiCo, there were a lot of things we did as strategic bets. No one was ever sure of anything. We would put something into a consumer test, and what everybody thought would win didn't always win. And so even with the best and brightest minds in the advertising world, a lot of times you're just surprised to see how customers ultimately respond. And to your point, it seems like nowadays anybody with a laptop can say, "Oh, I'm in marketing," and that hurts the industry. And so there isn't a lot of standardization. Every industry is unique. Every business is unique. It's such a complex problem to try to solve across just the 4 Ps. There's so many interconnectings that need to be stitched together. There's no standardization, which is why we try to put together simple frameworks and just think about those incremental milestones instead of trying to solve the entire puzzle. Because to your point, you're never going to solve the entire puzzle. It's like golf. You're never good enough. You always want to get better.
But then you have that one really good shot that always brings you back.
Exactly.
So we were talking about this, and as you're speaking, all I could think about, that's the fun part about marketing and the psychology of what do people respond to? What are they interested in? And that is, someone once asked me, Donna, what do you like and dislike about what you do? And I said, well, it's kind of the same thing. I love figuring it out, but it drives me crazy trying to figure it out because it's a science to figuring out the right people, the right messaging, the right channels at the right time.
Yes.
But when you do it, and like you said, you can't just be coming out of college and saying, oh, I'm a marketing expert and I know how to do it all. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
And that's why this programmatic seems like it could be a great way for even legacy companies to use it to keep their brands top of mind and to get people to take action on maybe a time-sensitive offer.
Right. Right. And it goes back to, what you said is think of yourself as a consumer, not your own brand's consumer, but think of yourself as a consumer and think about any major purchase decision and the steps that you go through.
Right.
And then put your marketing against that and say, what expectations should I really have of this marketing? And so looking at cost and looking at impact beyond just sales are some ways around that. But then the last part is when the people that do that, sometimes it's easy to get caught in, well, you may or may not be the target customer. So the message may or may not resonate with you. We were watching the Super Bowl, and obviously, when you're in the marketing and advertising industry, you're watching as much for the commercials as anything else. And we were debating just as a team some of the commercials, and it was just interesting how different commercials resonated with different people and how they took different things away just based on their own unique background, their own unique perspective on the world that was derived from their life experiences. So me and the person sitting next to me could see the exact same commercial and have very different takeaways based on our own biases and how we see things. And so keeping that in mind, you're designing for that target customer and you're trying to persuade that target customer who is a person going on a journey that you're trying to get to consider you.
Yeah. Oh, and I think that's why you always switch things up, because like you said, you and the person next to you, you could be, the same gender, same age, same whatever, but you could respond to a message differently. And that's why companies need to change things up so that it resonates with different people at different times.
Right. Absolutely. Or think about even, one of the things we employed at PepsiCo is just the concept of a bullseye and a halo.
Yeah.
Really define that bullseye, but then make sure the message can halo to that secondary audience. That doesn't alienate that secondary audience. It may not resonate as strong as the bullseye, but it still works.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good point. That's very interesting. Especially, people say, get very targeted, get very niche in your, messaging. But like you said, that's a good point. Don't alienate the outer areas because they still might be very interested in what you have to offer.
Absolutely.
Good point. All right. Here's my final question for you. And this is kind of a loaded thing. Here we are, World Innovators. We started as a list company back in 1980, and now we've evolved into different marketing channels. So we're a B2B marketing agency.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think B2B marketing agencies will look like 5 years from now? What will they be doing?
That's an interesting question. I think there's going to be equal components of insights, research, brand and positioning strategy, trying to develop persona. Some of the things you're all doing now, but maybe a bit more hands-on, maybe getting a little bit more involved in the entire sales process. But I think taking a step back, taking a much more granular look at how different touch points with that target customer, ranging from conventions to digital to website to traditional to mailers to everything, start stitching together and putting together models through regressions that can ultimately show that value across the journey. And so as big data computing becomes just more and more accessible, tools like that are going to become more and more prevalent and give B2B brands a way to think more about that journey versus that last handshake and the deal.
Right. Oh, and I agree with that. It is that process leading up to that handshake. But if you want to keep them as customers year after year, you've got to really build that relationship, and that gets built over the years. So then is Awarity, are you integrated with any marketing platforms at this time?
So we're working on actually an integration to pull data from Google Analytics so that we can show how awareness building is impacting new website visitors that are coming to the site organically or through direct URL. Okay. We do utilize a third-party DSP right now. Okay. And but they have all the functions that we need. It basically gives us access to the ad exchanges. Right. And then we built our own dashboard rather than relying on a third-party platform. We built our own dashboard, which enables us to now start pulling data from different advertising platforms into one central location and make it easier for brands to see how their total campaigns are performing. We felt like looking at the off-the-shelf solutions wasn't sufficient for us. So currently you can see our performance, but we are going to be rolling out in the coming months where you can start seeing other campaign performance and make our platform that one place that makes it easy to see everything that you're doing in one stop.
And that's important because now marketing teams are either cut back, they don't have enough people to handle everything marketing needs to be nowadays, with your social, with your emails, with your, programmatic, with your print. There's too many jobs. So if they could come onto one place like Awarity and start to see how they are touching their target audience and the type of action that audience is taking along the way, that's going to help them fine tune their marketing messages.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's wonderful. Well, I want to thank you very much. I think this was a great interview, and I thank you for your time today.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Good. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the B2B Marketing Excellence Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss our next episode. And in the meantime, if you'd like to talk to me, please feel free to send me an email to dpeterson@worldinnovators.com. Till next time, have a great day.